Now, what I want to help you understand in this video is why you have these people-pleasing tendencies and how to break out of them and develop your own inner sense of self-worth, strength, assertiveness, and boundaries so that you stop getting taken for a ride by the people in your life. Now, you've probably come to this realization because of the fact that you've spent so many years giving and giving and giving, and you're just finally reaching a point where all of the giving is starting to make you feel resentful because you're not getting anything in return. No appreciation, no respect, no equal reciprocation of energy or effort, and you're at a point where you just feel like you're being taken for a ride. Now, this tends to show up most in your career with your boss, in your relationship with your partner, with your parents, maybe even your friends. But the truth is that it always centers around some form of a relationship. And in that relationship, you've created an imbalanced dynamic where you have put the other person up on a pedestal above you. So for example, I've drawn this before, but essentially here are the other people. Let's just draw a quick person. This might be a partner. It might be a boss, whoever it might be. It doesn't really matter. And then here is you. You have put yourself down below this person and you've put them up on this pedestal. And it's because of this perception dynamic that you're needing, or you have this internal, belief that you need to do more than they do to you because you are inferior to them. And in order to gain their respect, their love, their admiration, you have to appease to them by essentially outlaying all of this energy. I wonder if I've got my yellow texture here. I do. You have to outlay all of this energy, money, potential, whatever it may be. You're outlaying all of this up towards them, and they don't relay it back, at least not in equal proportion to how much you're outlaying it to them. Now, this all stems from your childhood, like most things, your earlier years, where potentially with your parents, you felt like you had to appease to them and fulfill their needs in order to get your needs met. Maybe they weren't as attentive to you as you would have liked them to be, or as aware of your needs emotionally and physically that you had during those periods of time. And so in order to get their love and attention, you had to really fulfill their needs and do what it was that they asked of you and be the person that they wanted you to be. A lot of the time, this would have been the nice guy or girl who appeased to everyone around them and put on this mask and this facade of niceness and put all of their assertiveness into a bag that they've completely repressed. Now, because of this repression of your assertiveness, you have developed this muscle whereby you see every dynamic in your life through this lens, where you have to earn other people's respect, earn their love, and earn this idea that they might like you. And because of that dynamic, you've become this people-pleasing person. Now, obviously there are multiple solutions to this. One of them is to do the deep inner work to try and heal those original wounds that you have around why you needed to appease to people in the first place, to please them and get their love and affection, because that wasn't true, or it's not fundamentally true. It was just true in that single dynamic, which may have come from someone else projecting their own inferiorities or insecurities or their own lack of self-worth onto you because they were trying to find it elsewhere. That's obviously the first step, but that's a bit too deep for this video. So I want to touch on, some of the key principles that you have to understand in order to become more assertive, develop some boundaries, and stop being such a people pleaser. Because ultimately, this whole dynamic comes around the fact that you don't have boundaries around how much you give. You don't have boundaries around what you'll say yes to and what you'll say no to. You don't have boundaries about what you'll accept within your relationship with your boss, your partner, your friends, or your family. And because you don't have these boundaries, you get taken for a walk. And again, you reinforce this idea in your head that you have to do these things to just maintain equilibrium. And equilibrium looks like this, right? Your equilibrium is you tilted downwards in the inferior position. So what you really need to do is you need to firstly start to develop these boundaries. Now, you have to start small here. You can't just say, I don't know, what's a good boundary. Like you might not want to go as extreme as saying to your family, I'm never coming to Christmas again because I hate having to come to Christmas. Like that's obviously a bit extreme. But for example, if you have maybe your parents on a certain day of the week ask you to do a certain thing that you do out of the kindness of your heart, that you've done for years and years, that you don't really need to do, but you do it because, they asked you to do it and you can do it. But in your head, in the back of your mind, you're becoming resentful of doing that thing. the best thing you can do is actually have a conversation with them about how this is actually not something that you're willing to do because of your time priorities that you want to put into your relationship or your career, or for whatever reason it may be. And so this is no longer something that you're able to do. However, with that being said, you will help them find an alternative solution, which may be hiring someone else to do it or finding some way to eliminate the task altogether. Random example, but if we apply it to your relationships, maybe there are certain boundaries that your partner is crossing. Maybe she is or he is liking other people's photos on Instagram very publicly. I see this all the time with guys. They are liking other girls' Instagram posts while they have a girlfriend. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Do you not have any respect for your partner? What it really makes me think though is, does that partner not have any respect for herself? And a lot of the time when these partner dynamics happen, a lot of the time the actual partner who's receiving this disrespect and this mistreatment is actually aware of it, but just doesn't know how to confront it in a way with enough assertiveness to actually overcome it. Because if you're in a relationship and you perceive yourself in this dynamic and you try to approach someone with one of these like problems that you have, but you don't have the assertiveness to really assert your point, and you don't have the willingness to walk away, then you're going to get taken for a ride, and they're going to make excuses and they're going to beat around the point, and you're going to continue to be mistreated and taken for a ride. Whereas if you develop the self-worth to put yourself at level with the other person, right? So not above, not below, at level with the other person. If you can build the self-worth to actually do that, and if you are being mistreated and you say, hey, I want to set this boundary, and they say, no, I don't agree with that boundary, then you have to be willing to walk away from the relationship. Because if you are not willing to walk away from the relationship, whether or not you actually intend to, if you're not at least willing to, because you don't have the foundational self-worth to know that after the relationship ends that you will be okay, then they will continue to abuse you and take advantage of your lack of boundaries. And it's going to result in a toxic relationship anyway. What you'll probably realize is that all of these problems and all of these people-pleasing tendencies stem from the fact that you have low self-worth. And so you really need to do the work to develop your self-worth. I've talked about this before, but for example, if I can get the lid off, if this is you and the only pillar in your life is your relationship with your partner, and that's the only pillar that you have that's holding up your self-worth, and it's the only pillar that you have that makes up your identity, then if you lose that, you're going to experience a complete ego death. And this is why a lot of people in relationships get taken for a walk, because all of their self-worth is derived from the relationship. If you were in this position, or maybe it's your career, for example, and you're getting taken for a ride by your boss, or maybe it's just your career and your love life, and you're getting taken for a ride in both of those, you have to start to diversify your identity and add new pillars to really make sure that your self-worth is bolstered by more than just one or two things. For example, you could obviously go to the gym and really build your body. That's the best attempt at a dumbbell I can build. Maybe it is learning, right? See if we can draw a book. Learning, right? What's another thing? Maybe some form of like martial arts, right? So let's just imagine that this is a dude getting kicked in the face by another dude. Look at that. You get the point though, right? What I'm trying to show you here and say is that you need to bolster your identity so that you can pull self-worth from multiple different things. Now, of course, there is the whole fact that you have like these emotional layers from your past. Like if you look back on your timeline, I know I'm going through a lot right here and it's getting a bit cluttered, but let's say that on your timeline at the age of like 12, you went through something where maybe you were cheated on, and then after that you were like bullied by your friends and completely kicked out of your friend group and you were left completely alone. That's obviously going to leave some scar tissue. And I call this an emotional layer, which then skews your perception of yourself and the world. Let's just imagine this is like a red pair of glasses that are skewing the way you see everything. Again, this is what's going to create this dynamic where you see yourself as less than other people. So you have to, of course, at some point, because this is not easy work, start to deal with those emotional traumas and start to clear out these emotional layers that are clouding your view of yourself and the world and causing you to see yourself as inferior to others. But one of the fastest paths that you can take to increasing your self-worth is quite literally just by adding new adding new pillars to your identity and diversifying your identity, right? With gym, learning, maybe dating, if that's a thing, having friends, having close relationships with your family, maybe going for runs or adventuring or cars and driving and building a car, whatever it may be, right? You have to have multiple pillars so that when one thing or two things drop, you don't crumble, and so that you don't have to rely on those one or two things, because if you do, those one or two things will take you for a ride. So obviously with that as well, you do have to develop, like I said, the boundaries, right? The willingness to walk away, which comes from the self-worth, but you also have to develop your assertiveness. And this comes, at the fundamental level from learning to say no. If you can't say no, then again, you will be taken advantage of and you won't develop the muscle of assertiveness. You can practice this in so many different ways. You can even practice it by just taking risky behaviors. Like I hear Tim Ferriss talking about, I forget what he calls it, but the discount challenge maybe, where you go to a coffee shop and you just ask them, hey, can I have a discount on this, like a 10% discount? And sometimes they'll actually agree with it. But the whole point of the process is to actually just do something uncomfortable, right? So just summarize all this, because that was a lot in one very messy summarized piece of paper. The reason that you're a people pleaser is because you see yourself as inferior to other people, and so you feel like you have to give to them in order to receive, but the truth is you never receive in equal proportion. That makes you resentful. A lot of this stems from the fact that you don't have boundaries because you aren't willing to walk away, and you have to really develop these boundaries and the willingness to walk away in order for those boundaries to be accepted and to create a even level playing field with you and your partner or your boss or your friend or whoever it may be. Now, the reason that most people are unwilling to walk away and have this low self-worth is because their identity is bolstered to one thing, which is typically either their career, where their boss takes them for a ride, or it's their relationship with their partner, where their partner takes them for a ride. So you have to diversify your identity with more pillars so that you can bolster your sense of self-worth and have it not be reliant on one thing. It's like your investment portfolio. You have to diversify, because if you invest everything into one stock and that stock crashes, you lose everything. Whereas if you're diversified, like an index fund, which is diversified across 500 companies, then you're fine because you have that even spread and a lot more of a foundation to hold you up. Of course, at the deep level, there are these emotional layers that you have based on past traumas and experiences which you must heal. But that is a topic for another video. And so with that, guys, I hope it was valuable. If it was, subscribe. I'll leave another video here, and I'll see you in the next one.